Welcome to this course about intercultural competencies and the use of ICT for their development. And in this first module, we will work and reflect about the intercultural competencies framework. And first, I will show you some widely used definitions of what intercultural competencies are. You can read them on the screen. And I have highlighted some of the main ideas about intercultural competencies. And they are related with, of course, diversity of people and of environments, and about interaction in those environments, which are complex, are diverse. And as any other type of competencies, they are composed by different types of skills in the cognitive, affective, and behavioral domains. And I will show you another definition just to have different views on this. Again, you will find the interaction with others, to accept and to respect, to know about others' perspectives, also about mediation between perspectives, and about awareness of our individual own values and judgments and attitudes around diversity. And these definitions are, and you will find some more anywhere, but I would like to place an alert before we go on, because there have been also some critiques or some different views about the underpinning concepts or conceptualization of diversity in these definitions. And then I would like to show you some questions that I would like you to make to yourselves before we go on. And I would like you to share this, your comments on this on the course, in the forum. And who are the others when we talk about intercultural competencies? What is interculturality? And what is interaction? And what's the importance of the context of interaction besides the interaction itself? I'm sure you have also other questions. So now, before we go on, I would like you to reflect a bit on this. And I will try to give you some views about the first two questions. Who are the others and what is interculturality? And here there are, it's very basic, the classification, but there are two different views we can identify about how diversity or interculturality is conceptualized. The first one, you can find it, it's focused on the cultural differences. And there is a view of culture or differences as something more static or monolithic. And this model leads to it's called a culturalism or multiculturalism. But on the other hand, there is another view, which is the one I advance this, that I would like to, I defend or I hold. And it's called about cultural diversity. And differences and diversity are viewed as a dynamic constructions where intersubjectivity and interaction and the context of the interaction between people is very important. And probably in the first model, the cultural differences model, you can relate it to categorization of groups, cultural groups, ethnic groups, gender groups. But the cultural diversity model goes further and identifies diversity in every single person. All of us are diverse, and we are not none of us are representatives of any culture, because we impersonate the culture, and we incarnate and reconstruct the culture. So we are, in my presentation in this course, we will be centered in the second model. And about this, I will recommend some more readings at the end. And I wanted to highlight these differences because some of the critiques to the intercultural competencies framework come from the difficulty to go to this second model of cultural diversity in some of the competencies, intercultural competencies frameworks. So now, going ahead. What are intercultural competencies? Here again, and as I did with the definitions, I will show you some different classifications of intercultural competencies by different authors. This one is from Bennett, and she divides the competencies in knowledge, skills, and attitudes, or talking about domains, the cognitive domain, the affective domain, and the behavioral domain. I won't read because you have them on the screen, but you see that they are very relevant competencies for any people, regardless the group that they could belong to. And they appeal also to us as teachers, as well as to any learner. Another widely used classification of intercultural competencies is that from Byram. And he, also with some colleagues, he divides them in 5 groups that have to do with knowledge, with understanding, with learning and discovering, with being, and with participating or getting involved. This is very widely used, and there have been some critiques to this model, mainly because they focus, but this happens with any competencies model, that they are very individually based, individually focused. So it seems that the competencies that of course have to be developed by individuals, but it sometimes forgets the context where that takes place. And this is very important in intercultural education, the context where things happen and the interaction that happens there. And this last classification I will show you about the intercultural competencies is one by UNESCO, and it is also interesting because it interprets competencies as a process of learning first to know, so this is common to other classifications, to do, which would be the skills and the active interaction with others, the process of interacting, and the skills we put on and we develop and put in place when we interact with others. And the last competence would be learning to be, that has to do with the attitudes that were also present in the other models. And here it's important that they consider it as the reflective step of thinking and becoming aware of our own position or role or situation in the global world as global citizens. So this would be the 3 classification, and also this is also by UNESCO a visual presentation of competencies as a tree with some roots, some branches, some leaves, and you can find it in one of the references I will show you. So after this overview of the intercultural competencies, I hope you are interested in maybe in going further on these conceptual frames. And here you can find some readings about all this intercultural competencies framework. Those that I have showed you, the UNESCO one, Byram's, there are different publications from him, Janet. And also I recommend, if you want to read some critiques to the intercultural competencies frameworks, very interesting from my point of view, I recommend this Fred Derbin ones and also Catherine Matuo's critique. It's interesting to know how they, it's not a destructive critique because they still use those models, but it's a complement. It adds different elements from the cultural diversity model to these intercultural competencies frameworks. So I hope you keep interested in this, and thank you for your attention.